The bar was quiet except for the low hum of conversation and the clink of glasses. It sat on the edge of the Kryn homeworld's capital city, a place where soldiers came to forget and remember at the same time. The lighting was dim, casting long shadows across the worn tables and chairs that had seen countless warriors come and go. Commander Vexthor sat in his usual corner booth, his massive frame taking up most of the space. He was old now, at least by Kryn standards. His chitinous armor had dulled from its once brilliant purple to a gray that spoke of too many battles in too many years. 3 of his 4 arms worked properly. The 4th, his upper left, ended in a stump just below the elbow. He never talked about how he lost it. Not usually. Tonight was different, though. Tonight, 5 young cadets had found him. They wore fresh uniforms that had never seen combat. Their armor plates still shined. Their eyes held that eager light that only the young and inexperienced possessed. They wanted stories. They always wanted stories. "Commander Vexthor," one of them said, his voice full of respect. "We heard you fought in the human war. Is it true?" Vexthor looked at them with his dark, compound eyes. He took a long drink from his glass before answering. The liquid burned going down, but it was a familiar burn, a welcome one. "Yes," he said simply. "I fought them." The cadets exchanged excited glances. They pulled chairs over to his booth, crowding around like children at story time. One of them, a female named Crixta, leaned forward eagerly. "They say the humans surrendered after seeing our superior forces," she said. "That they begged for mercy when they realized how outmatched they were." Vexthor made a sound deep in his throat. It might have been a laugh. It might have been something else entirely. He set his glass down and looked at each of them in turn. "Is that what they teach you now?" he asked. "Is that what the history files say?" The cadets nodded. Another one, a young male named Drexnor, spoke up. "The war lasted 5 cycles and ended with a negotiated peace that recognized human territory. The Empire showed mercy to the primitive species." "Primitive?" Vexthor repeated the word like it tasted bad. "Yes, that is what we thought too. That is what everyone thought." He gestured to the bartender for another drink. When it arrived, he held it up to the light, watching the liquid catch and reflect the dim glow of the bar. The cadets waited in silence, sensing that something important was about to be said. "Let me tell you the truth," Vexthor began. "Let me tell you what really happened 60 cycles ago, when the Kryn Empire first met humanity." He drank again, then continued. "The Galactic Council had been exploring that sector for years. It was unremarkable territory, no valuable resources, no strategic importance, just empty space with a few scattered star systems. Then the scouts found Earth." The cadets listened, their attention completely focused on the old warrior. Vexthor's voice took on a distant quality, as if he was seeing the past play out before him. "The initial reports were disappointing. The planet was inhabited by a bipedal mammalian species, humans, they called themselves. They had no natural armor. No claws or fangs worth mentioning. No venom. No natural weapons at all. They were soft creatures, fragile things that would break easily." He held up his remaining hands. "Our warriors are born ready for battle. Our armor grows from our skin. Our strength can tear through steel. We are bred for war. But these humans, they had none of that. They were weak. The scans showed they had barely achieved basic spaceflight. Their fastest ships were slow and clumsy. Their weapons were primitive projectile throwers and early energy weapons. Their technology was at least 300 cycles behind the major galactic powers. Some of them still fought wars with chemical explosives and metal bullets on their own planet." Crixta shook her head. "How did such a species even survive to reach space?" "That," Vexthor said, "is the question we should have asked. But we did not. We only saw what we wanted to see. Easy prey. A primitive world ripe for conquest." He leaned back, his massive frame making the chair creak. "The High Command decided Earth would be the first step in expanding the Empire's borders in that sector. The planet had good water, breathable atmosphere, and decent resources. The humans would be given a choice: surrender and become part of the Empire, or be removed. The Council sent an expeditionary force, 50 warships, To the High Command, it seemed like more than enough. Some even thought it was excessive for such a primitive species. They expected the humans to surrender the moment they saw our ships in orbit. Our technology was so far beyond theirs. Our warriors so much more powerful. Victory seemed certain. Drexnor frowned. Only 50 ships? For an entire planet? Yes, Vexthor said. Because we did not think we needed more. The humans had perhaps 200 small system defense ships, outdated designs with weak weapons. Our 50 warships could have destroyed 1,000 such vessels. Or so we calculated. He paused, and something dark passed across his face. A memory that still had teeth after all these years. The fleet jumped into the Sol system, as the humans called it. They took position in orbit around Earth. The commander of the fleet, Admiral Krondax, opened a channel to the human governments. He gave them the ultimatum. Surrender or die. Simple. Clean. The way conquests were supposed to go. The humans requested time to consider. They asked for 72 hours to consult with their various nations and governments. Earth was not united under one rule, you see. They still fought among themselves, divided into hundreds of separate territories and factions. We thought this made them even weaker. Admiral Krondax granted them the time. He was feeling generous. The fleet held position, confident and relaxed. Some of the warriors even placed bets on how quickly the humans would surrender. Most thought it would be less than the full 3 days. Vexthor finished his drink and set the glass down hard enough to make the table shake. 72 hours later, every single Kryn ship in that fleet was destroyed. All 50, thousands of warriors dead. Admiral Krondax's body was never recovered. The cadets stared at him in stunned silence. This was not what the history files taught. This was not what their instructors had told them. But how? Krixta finally asked. You said their technology was primitive. Their ships were weak. Vexthor looked at her with eyes that had seen too much. That is the question. The cadets waited while Vexthor ordered another drink. His 3 working hands moved slowly, and they could see the weight of memory in every gesture. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Harder. Like stone grinding against stone. The High Command did not believe the first reports, he said. They thought there had been some mistake, some malfunction. Perhaps the fleet jumped too close to the star and was destroyed by radiation. Perhaps a solar flare caught them off guard. Anything except the truth. He drank deeply before continuing. But the distress signals told a different story. In those final moments, the ships managed to send fragmentary data back home. Images of human vessels swarming like insects, records of weapons fire from unexpected angles, tactical data that made no sense, and screams. Lots of screams. Drexnor shifted uncomfortably in his seat. What did the High Command do? What they always do, Vexthor said. They sent more ships, more warriors, me included. I was younger then, strong, eager for glory. I commanded a heavy assault cruiser with a crew of 300 of the Empire's finest soldiers. We were part of a fleet of 300 warships. A real war fleet this time, not just an expeditionary force. He looked down at his missing arm, the stump moving slightly as phantom muscles tried to flex fingers that no longer existed. We were so confident. 300 ships against a primitive species that got lucky once. We would crush them. We would burn their cities and take their world. We would teach the galaxy what happened when you defied the Kryn Empire. The old warrior's mandibles clicked together in what might have been bitter amusement. The universe has a way of teaching lessons to those who think they have nothing to learn. We learned? Oh, how we learned. The fleet jumped into the Sol system ready for immediate combat. We expected their pitiful system defense ships to scatter before us. We expected them to run. Instead, we found something that should have been impossible. Vexthor leaned forward, his voice dropping lower. The cadets had to strain to hear him over the bar's background noise. In the weeks since the First Fleet's destruction, the humans had militarized everything. Every single thing. Mining stations that once harvested asteroids for ore now bristled with missile batteries. Civilian cargo ships had been converted into weapons platforms. They had strung the entire inner system with satellites carrying explosives. Even their space debris had been weaponized. Pieces of old stations and broken ships had been fitted with simple thrusters and set on collision courses. Krixta's eyes widened. They turned garbage into weapons? Into very effective weapons, Vexthor confirmed. Our sensors could not tell the difference between inert debris and armed debris until it was too late. Ships were damaged by objects we thought were harmless. It was clever, brutal, and it slowed our advance to a crawl. But we adapted. We designated certain ships to clear the debris. We moved more carefully. We still thought we would win easily once we closed with their fleet and our superior warriors could board their vessels. We still thought our strength would overwhelm their weakness. He paused, and pain flashed across his alien features. We thought wrong. My ship, the Devastator, was part of the first boarding action. We breached a human military vessel they called the Defiant. A stupid name. What could they defy? They were outmatched in every way. Or so we believed. Vexthor's good hands curled into fists on the table. I led 50 warriors into that ship, 50 of the Empire's best. We had trained for cycles. We had fought in a dozen campaigns. We were prepared for anything, except what we found. The humans were waiting for us, not in formation, not in defensive positions. They were scattered through the ship in small groups. We thought they were disorganized. We thought they were panicking. We were wrong again. Lieutenant Jake Morrison commanded the human defenders. I learned his name later, after I saw his service record. He was a career soldier, had fought in 3 of Earth's regional wars before joining their space fleet. He was not big. Maybe came up to here on me. Vexthor gestured to his mid-torso. Maybe weighed 1/3 of what I weigh. Soft skin. No armor except what he wore. Should have been easy to kill. The old commander's voice grew quiet. He killed 12 of my warriors before we brought him down. 12. And it took all 50 of us working together to do it. The cadets looked at each other in disbelief. Drexnor spoke up. How is that possible? 1 human against 50 Kryn warriors? That is what I asked myself as I watched it happen, Vexthor said. The humans used everything as a weapon. Morrison's squad had prepared the ship before we arrived. They vented atmosphere in certain sections. They manipulated the gravity plating. They set traps that our sensors did not detect. Every corridor was a death zone. Every room a potential grave. But it was not just the tactics, it was them, the way they fought. We Kryn are strong. We can rip through steel with our bare hands. We can take wounds that would kill most species and keep fighting. But the humans? They did not seem to care about wounds at all. Vexthor's voice shook slightly. I watched a human soldier named Kyle Peters take a plasma shot to the chest. It burned through his armor and into his body. He should have died. He should have at least fallen down. Instead, he charged the warrior who shot him. With 2 broken arms from a previous fight, he could not hold his weapon. So he used his teeth to pull a grenade pin. He killed himself and 3 of my warriors. That is when I started to understand. These humans did not fight like any species we had encountered. They did not retreat when they were losing. They did not surrender when they were surrounded. Every single one of them fought like they had already accepted death and wanted only to take as many of us with them as possible. The old warrior took another drink, his hands slightly unsteady. We won that boarding action. We took the Defiant. But we lost 43 warriors doing it. The humans numbered only 30. We killed them all, but the cost was unacceptable. 1 human for nearly 1.5 Kryn warriors. Our victories were supposed to be overwhelming. This felt like defeat. And that was just 1 ship. The battle raged for 6 days across the entire system. We won most engagements. Our ships were better armored, our weapons more powerful, but every victory cost us. The humans made us pay for every meter of space. They made us pay in blood and warriors and ships. When it was over, we held the orbital space around Earth. But we had lost 97 ships, 97 out of 300. The High Command was furious. They demanded to know how such losses were possible against a primitive enemy. Vexthor looked at each cadet in turn. I sent them my report. I told them the truth. The humans were not primitive. They were experienced. Every single one of their soldiers had trained for combat in ways we could not imagine. They came from a world where they fought each other constantly, where they studied war as we study science. They had thousands of years of tactical knowledge built up from endless conflicts on their own planet. Vexthor ordered another round of drinks, not just for himself but for the cadets too. They needed it. What he was about to tell them would shake their understanding of Kryn's superiority. It had certainly shaken his. Mars, he said the word like a curse. That is where everything changed. That is where we learned that controlling space did not mean we had won. That is where the humans showed us what they really were. The cadets took their drinks with unsteady hands. Krixta spoke first. Mars is the fourth planet in their system, correct? The red one? Yes, Vexthor confirmed. The humans had been terraforming it for decades. Not fully habitable yet, but good enough for domed colonies. About 50,000 humans lived there in underground tunnel networks connected to surface habitats. We thought it would be an easy target, a stepping stone for the invasion of Earth itself. He stared into his glass as if seeing the past reflected in the liquid. I was part of the ground invasion force. 5,000 Kryn warriors against maybe 2,000 human defenders. We had them outnumbered. We had better armor, better weapons. We had fought on 100 worlds and won. Mars should have been simple. Captain Ryan Brooks commanded the human defense. I learned his name later after months of fighting him. He was not impressive to look at. Average height for a human. Lean build. Had a scar across his face from some previous war. But his eyes were the eyes of someone who understood death very well. Vexthor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among his species. We landed at the main colony site, 5 dropships, hundreds of warriors pouring out onto the red sand. The humans fell back immediately. They abandoned their surface positions without a fight. We thought they were running. We thought we had them scared. We were idiots. Drexnor leaned forward. What happened? They led us into the tunnels, Vexthor said. Miles and miles of underground passages connecting the colony sections. Perfect for our warriors, we thought. Close quarters combat where our superior strength would dominate. We sent squads into the tunnels to hunt down the remaining humans. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. That is when we learned that humans are pursuit predators. Do you know what that means? The cadets shook their heads. Vexthor continued, his words careful and measured. On Earth, before humans developed technology, they hunted animals for food. But they were not fast enough to catch most prey. They were not strong enough to fight large animals directly. So they evolved a different method. They would chase prey for days, following, never stopping. The prey would run until it collapsed from exhaustion. Then the humans would finish it. That instinct never left them. On Mars, we thought we were the hunters. We were wrong. The humans disappeared into those tunnels and we went after them. Hours passed, then days. Our warriors would catch glimpses of human soldiers and give chase. But the humans always stayed just ahead, always led us deeper into the maze. Vexthor's remaining hands trembled slightly. Then they struck. Not in direct combat. Not in ways we could defend against. They attacked our supply lines. They sabotaged our equipment. They would wound a warrior rather than kill him, knowing we would never abandon our injured. Then they would track the rescue party and hit them too. Sergeant Emma Davis was particularly effective at this. A human female, small even by their standards. She led a recon unit of 8 soldiers. Those 8 pinned down over 200 of our warriors for 4 days. Every time we tried to move, they were there. Every time we thought we had them cornered, they vanished. They were ghosts. Krixta interrupted. But our warriors need less rest than humans. We should have been able to outlast them. Vexthor made that grinding sound again. That is what we thought. A Kryn warrior can fight intensely for 4 to 5 hours before needing significant rest. We thought humans would be even weaker. They look fragile. Their bodies seem delicate. We were wrong about that too. Humans can keep going for days. Not fighting at full intensity, but moving, thinking, planning, executing ambushes. They would rest in shifts while their companions kept watch. They would eat while walking. They would treat wounds while retreating. They never stopped moving. I watched warriors who had fought in dozens of campaigns collapse from exhaustion while the humans we were chasing kept running. It made no sense. Their bodies should not have been able to do what they did, But they did it anyway. The old commander's voice took on an edge of something like respect mixed with horror. We captured some human soldiers eventually. Interrogations revealed something disturbing. Brooks and his officers had been studying us since the first fleet arrived. They analyzed every piece of combat footage. They identified our tactics, our weak points, where our armor was thinnest, what angles our weapons could not cover. And they shared this information with every single soldier on Mars within days. Every human knew exactly how to fight us, exactly where to aim to pierce our armor, exactly how to exploit our four-armed reach to create blind spots. They treated war like a science, like a problem to solve. And they were brilliant at solving problems. Drexnor looked confused. But we still had superior numbers and firepower. How did they hold out? They did not hold out, Vexthor said. They won, not quickly, not easily. But over 3 months of fighting in those tunnels, they killed or wounded 3,000 Kryn warriors. 3,000 out of 5,000. The High Command was forced to evacuate the survivors. The cadets sat in stunned silence. This was impossible. This contradicted everything they had been taught. Krixta finally found her voice. The histories say we maintained control of Mars throughout the war. We maintained control of empty tunnels, Vexthor corrected harshly. The humans evacuated the civilian population to Earth in the first week. After that, every human left on Mars was a soldier. And they made that planet their fortress. We could not hold it. Every time we tried, they bled us until we had to withdraw. He took a long drink, draining his glass completely. But Mars taught us something more important than tactics. It taught us that humans were not afraid of us. We Kryn had conquered dozens of species. Our reputation alone made most enemies surrender. But humans did not care about our reputation. They did not care how many battles we had won. They did not care that we were bigger and stronger. They had a saying that Brooks told me during one of the brief ceasefires when we would exchange wounded. He said, "We have been climbing our way up the food chain since we learned to throw rocks. We did not stop at the top of our world. Why would we stop at the top of the galaxy?" Vexthor gestured for another drink, and his voice became even quieter. That is when I started to fear them. Not in battle, not when facing their warriors directly, but the idea of them. A species that saw the entire universe as something to conquer, that saw every obstacle as something to overcome, that refused to accept limits. We Kryn fight for glory and territory. We stop when the cost becomes too high. But humans, they fight for survival, for their homes, for their species. And they do not stop. They cannot stop. It is not in there. The night had grown late. The bar was emptier now, just a few scattered patrons nursing drinks in the dim light. Vexthor seemed older somehow, as if telling these stories was aging him in real time. But he continued. The cadets needed to hear this. The Empire needed them to know the truth. The middle years of the war, Vexthor began, his voice rough with memory and alcohol, that is when we brought everything we had. The High Command was furious about Mars, furious about our losses. They committed the elite shock troops, the best weapons from our arsenals, new battle tactics developed specifically for fighting humans. He paused, mandibles clicking slowly. Nothing worked for long, nothing. Whatever we tried, the humans adapted to it within weeks, sometimes days. It was like fighting water. You could push it aside, but it always flowed back, finding new paths, new ways to hurt you. Drexnor leaned forward, his young face showing confusion. But how? Our technology was cycles ahead of theirs. Our weapons more powerful. How could they adapt so quickly? Because they had to, Vexthor said simply. We came to their home. We threatened everything they had built. Everyone they loved. So they adapted, or they died. And humans are very, very good at not dying. He gestured with his remaining hands, illustrating his point. We developed a new armor-piercing round. Took our scientists a cycle to perfect it. Could punch through the heaviest human ship armor. We deployed it across all fronts. Within 1 month, the humans had created countermeasures. New composite armor that deflected the rounds. They analyzed the weapons we left behind after battles, figured out how they worked, and built defenses. 1 month. Krixta shook her head in disbelief. That is impossible. Our own scientists needed a cycle. Human scientists needed a month, Vexthor repeated, and they shared the solution with their entire military immediately. Every ship, every base, every soldier. Complete information distribution in days. We Kryn have strict information protocols, chain of command, security clearances. The humans ignored all of that when at war. If information could help someone kill us, they shared it with everyone. He took another drink, the liquid helping to ease the pain of remembering. We changed our battle formations, used tactics that had worked against a dozen other species. The humans adjusted their own tactics immediately. It was like they were reading our minds, like they knew what we would do before we did it. We captured a human intelligence officer during a raid, Major Sophie Lane. We thought we could learn their secrets from her. She was injured, weak, alone. We had her in a secure facility with guards. Vexthor's voice became almost admiring. She escaped within 2 days, killed 3 guards, stole a communication device and contacted her unit. They launched a rescue operation that cost us 50 warriors and destroyed the entire base. And before she left, Lane told me something I have never forgotten. She said humans come from a death world, that everything on Earth evolved to survive in an environment that was constantly trying to kill it. Diseases, predators, weather, other humans. For millions of years, their ancestors adapted to survive or they died. Those who could not adapt left no children. Only the adapters lived. Only the survivors passed on their genes. She said adaptation was not just a skill for humanity. It was their core survival trait, built into their very nature at a level deeper than thought. They adapted the way we breathe, automatically, constantly, without even trying. The cadets absorbed this in silence. Finally, Drexnor asked, "But the war spread to multiple systems, correct? We must have had some advantages in larger engagements?" "Yes," Vexthor admitted. "We won the big fleet battles more often than not. Our ships were better built. Our weapons had longer range. In open space combat with large numbers, we usually won. But humans won everywhere else. They excelled at the small operations, the raids, the ambushes, the special missions that destroyed key targets." His mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. They turned our own strengths into weaknesses. We were stronger. They used our strength against us with leverage and physics. We had better armor. They targeted our joints and weak points with precision. We had superior numbers. They made numbers irrelevant by attacking supply lines and support structures. "The broken spear incident," Vexthor said, the name like a curse. "That is what broke the morale of our forces. Commander Chris Bennett led a human strike team onto our flagship during the Battle of the Outer Colonies. Just 12 humans. 12. They did not try to destroy the ship. That would have been impossible. Instead, they infiltrated our computer systems. They hacked into our communication networks. And they fed false information to our fleet coordinators. Made 3 of our battle groups think the others had turned traitor. Those battle groups fired on each other before we realized what happened." Krixta looked horrified. "They made us kill our own warriors?" "They made us kill ourselves," Vexthor confirmed. "Over 200 ships destroyed or damaged by friendly fire before we could stop it. Bennett and his team escaped. Every single one of them made it back to human lines alive. They did not fire a shot. They just used our own systems against us." The old warrior's voice dropped to barely audible. That is when the fear really set in. Fear like we had never known. Kryn warriors, the most feared fighters in the galaxy, started jumping at shadows, started seeing humans everywhere, started questioning every order, every communication, wondering if it was real or if the humans had hacked our systems again. Humans could smell that fear, like predators scenting blood. And they exploited it ruthlessly. They would make noise in empty corridors, leave false signs of their presence, broadcast fake communications. Psychological warfare, they called it. Making us afraid of things that were not there so we would not see the real threats until too late. Drexnor's voice shook slightly. "But we are Kryn. We do not fear." "We did not fear," Vexthor corrected. "Past tense. Before humans, we thought we were the apex, the top predators. But humans showed us that Apex is not a place you reach. It is a place you defend. And they were very good at taking it away from species who thought they owned it. I remember one engagement near Jupiter. A human patrol vessel was surrounded by 5 of our warships. No way to escape. No way to win. The commander of that vessel, Captain Lisa Morgan, broadcast a message to us before we could fire. She said, "We know we cannot win this fight, but we will make you pay for it. Every human you kill costs you something you can never get back. Time, resources, warriors. Eventually, you will run out before we do." Then she rammed her ship into ours at full speed, destroyed her vessel, and crippled our flagship. Killed herself and her entire crew. But she was right. We could not afford losses like that forever. The humans could. They had billions more where she came from, all willing to do exactly what she did. Vexthor looked at each cadet with eyes that had seen too much. The High Command started to calculate the mathematics. Human population versus Kryn population. Human reproduction rates. Human industrial capacity once they reverse-engineered our technology. And the numbers told a story we did not want to hear. The bottle on the table was nearly empty. Vexthor poured the last of it into his glass and stared at the liquid like it held answers to questions he was afraid to ask. The cadets waited, their earlier enthusiasm gone, replaced by something darker. Understanding. Fear. Respect for an enemy they had been taught to dismiss. Year 4 of the war, Vexthor began, his voice carrying the weight of painful memory. We held some territory in human space. They held some positions in the outer systems. It was a stalemate, bloody, expensive, endless. The High Command kept telling us victory was near, that one more push would break the humans. But those of us actually fighting knew better. He gestured with his remaining hands, drawing invisible maps in the air. Then our long-range sensors detected something. A human ship, deep in Kryn territory. Not near the war zone. Not near any contested space. It was in the outer edges of our home system. Our home system. Krixta's eyes widened. How did it get past our defenses? That is what the High Command wanted to know, Vexthor said bitterly. The ship was called the Relentless, commanded by Captain Brandon Shaw. It was a deep space reconnaissance vessel, fast, stealthy, designed for long missions behind enemy lines. But no one thought they would go that far behind our lines. We sent ships to intercept, 8 of our fastest cruisers. When they got close enough to engage, the Relentless jumped away. But not back to human space. It jumped deeper into Kryn territory, to another system, then another. It spent 3 weeks traveling through our space, scanning our worlds, our stations, our defenses. Vexthor's mandibles clicked slowly, deliberately. We chased it the entire time, could never quite catch it. The humans had been studying our jump drive technology. They had made improvements. Their ship could jump more frequently with less cooldown time. Every time we got close, they were gone. Finally, they jumped back to human space, escaped cleanly. But they left something behind. A message, broadcast on all frequencies where we could not help but receive it. Captain Shaw said, "We know where you live. We know how to reach you. We can come to your homes the same way you came to ours. Think about that." The old warrior took a long drink. That message changed everything. Suddenly, the war was not just about conquering primitive humans in a distant system. It was about defending our own worlds, our own families. The High Command had to pull ships back from the front lines to guard Kryn space. It weakened our offensive capabilities significantly. But worse than that was the psychological impact. Every Kryn citizen had been told we were winning, that the humans were weak and defeated. Now they knew the truth. The humans could strike at us whenever they wanted. If they chose to, they could do to our worlds what we had tried to do to theirs. Drexnor spoke up, his voice uncertain. But they did not attack our worlds. Why? Because they did not need to, Vexthor explained. The threat was enough, and because I think they wanted to prove they were better than us. We had come to destroy. They came to warn. To show restraint even when they had the advantage. It made us look even worse by comparison. He paused, collecting his thoughts. The memories of those final days were the hardest to speak about. Around the same time, our intelligence reported something disturbing. Human scientists had successfully reverse-engineered our shield technology. Not just copied it, improved it. Dr. Kate Sullivan led the team. In 2 years, she took technology that took us centuries to develop and made it better, more efficient, more adaptable. That was when the calculations became impossible to ignore. Human advancement was exponential. Every year they grew stronger faster than the year before. They were reverse engineering our weapons, improving our designs, learning our tactics. Within a decade, they would equal us technologically. Within 2 decades, they would surpass us. Vexthor's voice grew quiet, almost sad. And they were still just fighting with a fraction of their population. Earth alone had 3 billion humans. Their colonies added another 500 million. Less than 1% of them were actual soldiers. If they fully mobilized? If they turned their entire civilization toward war the way we had? The mathematics were clear. We could not win, not in the long term. Every day the war continued, we grew weaker while they grew stronger. They were learning from us. We were just dying to them. Krixta looked down at her untouched drink. So the High Command surrendered? They would never call it that, Vexthor said, with that grinding sound of bitter amusement. They called it recognizing human sovereignty, establishing mutual borders, negotiating a lasting peace. They dressed it in diplomatic language. But those of us who fought knew what it really was. We lost. The primitives defeated us. He held up his stump of an arm. I lost this in one of the final battles. Grenade thrown by a human soldier I never even saw. Took my arm and 3 of my warriors. We were retreating by then, not advancing, not conquering. Retreating, trying to hold what we had, trying to survive. The peace treaty was signed. Human territory was recognized as sovereign. They kept all the systems they held. We withdrew completely from their space. Reparations were discussed but ultimately waived. The humans did not want our resources. They just wanted us gone. The old warrior looked at the cadets with eyes that had seen an empire's pride broken. The High Command tried to spin it as a victory, as if we had graciously chosen to recognize human rights. But the soldiers knew. The warriors who fought them knew. We did not choose anything. We were forced to accept peace or face extinction. Because that is what would have happened eventually. The humans were patient, determined, relentless. They would have kept coming, kept adapting, kept learning, until they were strong enough to come to our world and do to us what we tried to do to them. The only difference is, I think they would have succeeded. Drexnor's voice was barely above a whisper. Are we still in danger from them? Vexthor considered the question carefully. The Galactic Council has a new policy regarding humanity. We do not threaten them. We do not attack them. We do not enter their space without permission. We trade with them fairly. We negotiate with them respectfully. We treat them as equals. Not because we want to, not because of kindness or morality, but because we learned the lesson that every species in Earth's history learned. Sometimes the prey fights back. Sometimes the prey is stronger than you realized. Sometimes the prey wins. And sometimes, the prey was never prey at all. He finished his drink and set the glass down with finality. The humans are in the Galactic Council now, full members. They have trade agreements with a dozen species. Their technology continues to advance at a frightening pace. In another century, they will likely be one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. The night had grown very late. Through the bar's windows, the first hints of dawn colored the sky of the Kryn homeworld. Vexthor sat hunched over his drink, looking every one of his years. The cadets remained silent, processing everything they had heard. Their entire understanding of the Empire's strength had been shattered in one night. Finally, Krixta found her voice. Commander, why did you tell us this? The official histories paint a very different picture. Why risk telling us the truth? Vexthor looked at her with his dark compound eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke, his voice carrying a weight that made even the bartender stop and listen. Because lies will get you killed, he said simply. The High Command can tell whatever stories they want to the civilians. They can pretend the war ended in mutual respect and diplomatic triumph. But you are going to be warriors, soldiers, maybe someday officers. And if you believe the lies, if you think humanity is weak and primitive, you will make the same mistakes we did, and you will die for those mistakes. He leaned forward, his massive frame making the table creak. More than that, you need to understand what humanity represents. Not just what they are now, but what they will become. Because that is the real terror. The real lesson of the war. Drexnor shifted in his seat. What do you mean? Humans have been a spacefaring civilization for less than 200 of their years, Vexthor explained. 200 years. We Kryn have had space travel for over 5,000 years. The Valdrex for 8,000. The Shikari for 12,000. We are old races, mature, stable. We have reached the limits of our growth and settled into our place in the galaxy. His mandibles clicked slowly, thoughtfully. But humans? They are infants by galactic standards. Babies. And look what they accomplished in just 2 centuries. They went from basic chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel. From nuclear weapons to plasma cannons. From scattered nations to a unified species capable of defending their entire system. Now think about what they will be in another 200 years. In 1,000 years. In 10,000 years. They advance faster than any species we have ever encountered. And they show no signs of slowing down. If anything, they accelerate. Vexthor poured another round of drinks with his remaining hands. I have studied human history since the war ended. It is terrifying and fascinating in equal measure. They spent thousands of years fighting each other on their own planet. Endless wars. Countless battles. They perfected the art of killing their own kind with an efficiency that no other species has matched. But they also learned from every single conflict. They studied their mistakes. They analyzed their victories. They wrote books and treatises on warfare. They built academies to teach military strategy. They turned killing into a science and an art form simultaneously. Crixta spoke up, her voice uncertain. But surely their own conflicts weakened them, made them vulnerable? That is what we thought, Vexthor said. That is what every species thinks when they first learn about human history. All those wars must have left them fractured and weak. But the opposite is true. Those conflicts made them strong. They taught humanity lessons that most species never learn because they never face serious challenges. He gestured expansively with his hands. Most civilizations in the galaxy developed on worlds with limited competition. They evolved to the top of their food chains easily. Then they reached space and found they were still at the top. No real threats. No serious challenges. We grew complacent, comfortable. We stopped pushing ourselves to improve because we did not need to. But humans? They never stopped fighting. Never stopped competing. Never stopped trying to overcome the next obstacle. Their own planet tried to kill them with diseases and disasters. Their own species tried to kill them in wars. And every time, they survived. They adapted. They became stronger. Drexnor leaned back in his chair, looking overwhelmed. So, what are you saying? That humans are destined to rule the galaxy? I am saying, Vexthor replied carefully, that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of what they are, but because of what they can become. They have unlimited potential, and they have the drive to reach it. The old warrior's voice took on a philosophical tone. Every species has traits that define them. We Kryn have strength and honor. The Valdrex have logic and patience. The Shikari have memory and tradition. But humans? Their defining trait is possibility. They can become anything they need to be. Any threat they face, they adapt to overcome it. Any obstacle in their path, they find a way around, over, or through it. That is why the war ended the way it did. Not because we were weak. We were not. Not because they were overwhelmingly strong. They were not, at least not at the beginning. It ended that way because we reached our limit and they had not reached theirs. We gave them our best and they matched it. Then they prepared to give us more than we could handle. Crixta's voice shook slightly. Do you think they will come for us someday? Seek revenge for the war? Vexthor considered the question for a long moment. No, he finally said. I do not think they will seek revenge. That is not how they operate. Humans are practical, pragmatic. Revenge is inefficient. But they will remember. They will never forget that we tried to take their world, and they will make sure they are strong enough that no one can ever threaten them that way again. He took a drink and continued. I have met some humans since the war ended. Trade delegations, diplomatic missions. I even spoke with Lieutenant Morrison, the man who led the defense of the Defiant. He survived the war. Has scars across half his body, but he survived. I asked him if he hated us, if he wanted revenge for what we did to his world. Do you know what he said? Vexthor paused, remembering. He said, "Hate is expensive. It costs energy we need for building, for growing, for reaching the stars. We learned from you. You taught us that we need to be strong, that the galaxy is dangerous, that we cannot rely on anyone else to protect us. Those are valuable lessons, expensive lessons. But we paid the price and we learned them well. That is what humans are like. They take their pain and their suffering and they transform it into strength, into knowledge, into progress. They do not dwell on the past. They learn from it and move forward." The dawn light was stronger now, streaming through the windows and illuminating the empty bar. Vexthor stood slowly, his massive frame unfolding with the creaks and pops of age and old injuries. The cadets stood as well, showing respect to the old warrior. "Remember what I told you tonight," Vexthor said, looking at each of them in turn. "Remember that appearances can deceive, that weakness can hide strength, that primitives might not be primitive at all, and most importantly, remember that humanity is not our enemy anymore. But they could be, if we are foolish, if we forget the lessons of the war, if we make the same mistakes our ancestors made." He moved toward the door, then paused and looked back. The galaxy is changing. Humanity is part of it now. They bring new ideas, new energy, new potential. Some species fear this. They see humans as a threat to the old order. But I have come to see them differently. I see them as a reminder that stagnation leads to defeat, that comfort leads to weakness, that the species who stop growing are the species who get left behind. Humans will keep growing, keep advancing, keep pushing forward. And we have a choice. We can grow with them, learn from them, work alongside them, or we can fear them, resist them, and eventually be surpassed by them. Vexthor's mandibles clicked one final time. I know which choice I would make. I hope the Empire makes the same one. Because I fought humans once. I lost my arm to them. I watched them kill thousands of our finest warriors. And I learned that you cannot stop humanity. You can only hope to keep up with them. He walked to the door and pushed it open. Morning light flooded in, bright and clear. "Go back to your training," he told the cadets. "Learn your lessons, practice your skills, but do it with humility, with respect for all species, no matter how primitive they seem, because the galaxy is full of surprises, and some of those surprises have teeth." With that, Commander Vexthor walked out into the dawn, leaving the cadets standing in the empty bar with their minds full of uncomfortable truths and their certainties shattered. They had come seeking glory stories. They had received warnings instead. Warnings about pride, about assumptions, about a species that looked weak but fought like demons and thought like gods. The bartender began cleaning the table where they had sat. He found Vexthor's glass, still half full. Beside it was a small data chip. One of the cadets picked it up, looking at it curiously. "What is this?" she asked. The bartender shrugged. "He leaves one every time he tells the story. Said anyone who wants to really understand should watch it. Combat footage from the war, unedited, unfiltered, the things the High Command does not want people to see." The cadets looked at each other. Then, as one, they made their decision. They needed to see, needed to understand, needed to know the truth that their instructors had hidden from them. They would watch the footage. They would learn the real lessons of the human war. And they would carry those lessons forward into whatever future awaited the Kryn Empire in a galaxy where humanity was no longer prey, but something far more dangerous. Something that could prey back. The sun rose fully over the Kryn homeworld, beginning a new day. But for those 5 cadets, the darkness of ignorance had been burned away. They knew the truth now. And the truth, as always, was far more terrifying than any comfortable lie could ever be. And we have to live with the knowledge that we could have had them as allies. We could have approached them with respect and cooperation. Instead, we tried to conquer them. We made them our enemies. We taught them that the galaxy is a dangerous place where the strong prey on the weak. And now they are becoming strong. Very strong. The bar was empty except for them now. The bartender was cleaning glasses and pretending not to listen. Vexthor gestured for him to bring one more bottle. When it arrived, he poured drinks for everyone at the table. A toast, he said, raising his glass. To humanity, to the species that taught the Kryn Empire humility, to the primitives who were never primitive at all. May we never be foolish enough to make them our enemies again. The cadets raised their glasses uncertainly and drank. The liquid burned, going down, but it was nothing compared to the burning of wounded pride and shattered assumptions. We were losing, not quickly, not obviously, but slowly, steadily, like water wearing away stone. The humans were bleeding us in 1,000 small cuts, and every cut weakened us while they grew stronger. They learned from every battle, improved from every defeat, advanced their technology at a pace we could not match. That is when the High Command started discussing the unthinkable. Not how to win the war, but how to end it without losing everything. How to make peace with a species we had tried to conquer. How to survive what we had started. The bar was almost empty now. The cadets sat in shocked silence. Everything they thought they knew about the Empire's power was crumbling. Vexthor could see it in their faces. The same look he had worn 5 cycles into the war when he finally understood the truth. But the final blow, he said quietly, the thing that forced the High Command to sue for peace, that came later. That came when the humans proved they could hurt us where we lived. That came when they brought the war to our home. Nature. After Mars, the war changed. It was no longer about conquest, it became about survival. Our survival. Because we started to realize that if we did not stop the humans now, while they were still young and limited, they would eventually stop us. They would grow. They would spread. And they would never forget that we tried to take their world. The bar seemed darker now, the shadows longer. The cadets looked at their drinks without touching them. Vexthor could see the fear starting to grow in their eyes. Good. They needed that fear. It might keep them alive if they ever faced humans in battle. But that was still early in the war, he continued. We still thought we could win through attrition, through superior technology, through the weight of the Empire behind us. We had not yet learned the most terrifying thing about humans. We had not yet learned how fast they could adapt, how quickly they could learn, how rapidly they could turn our own advantages against us. And more than that, they had something we did not understand. A willingness to sacrifice themselves without hesitation if it meant hurting us. We Kryn value our lives. We retreat when defeat is certain. We surrender when survival is at stake. But humans? They seemed to think dying while fighting was better than living in defeat. The bar felt very cold suddenly. The cadets sat in silence, processing what they had heard. This was not the glorious story of Empire conquest they expected. This was something else entirely. That was just the beginning, Vexthor said softly. That was when we still thought we could win through superior force. Before we learned what humans really were. Before Mars. Before we understood that we were not fighting primitives. We were fighting something much, much worse. We were fighting a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to kill. And they were very good students, High Command asked. That is the question I asked when they sent me and 300 more ships to finish what the First Fleet could not. That is the question that haunted me for 5 cycles of war. He gestured for another drink. The answer is simple, though it took us far too long to understand it. We thought the humans were primitive. We judged them by their tools and their bodies. We were wrong. We were so very, very wrong. The bar seemed even quieter now. Vexthor looked at the young cadets and saw the questions forming in their eyes. He saw the doubt starting to creep in. Good. They needed to doubt. They needed to know the truth. That was just the beginning, he said softly. The real war had not even started yet, and when it did, we learned that humanity was not primitive at all. They were something far more dangerous. They were survivors, and they were very, very angry that we had threatened their home.